What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here at About Trout, I do fly fishing how-tos, gear reviews, fly tying stuff, some vlog stuff, and just stuff. So it's a great time, especially if you like trout, hence the channel name, About Trout. We about that, we taking over. Anyway, today's video is gonna be a quick one. I tried to shoot kind of a breakdown of my drift boat. Maybe I'll throw that up for you guys. Well, I'll give you a major pro tip. So sometimes seats change. This boat is a 2005. This is clearly a newer seat and it's raised here, which means the bolts that were sent to me are too short to fit, and the bolts that came with the old seat are too short. So yeah, this is the life of a fishing guide. So I'm gonna go back and go to the hardware store, get some longer bolts, and I guess I'll do this tomorrow morning before my trip. So that's the video, the harsh realities of a fishing guide. All right, take care, everybody. Bye. I went to go change the seat. I had the wrong size bolts, but don't worry, overcome, improvise, adapt. I got that done. But what today's video is gonna be about is 2 books and a video that'll really help you build a solid foundation in fly fishing, especially if you're a newer angler. My desk is messy behind me. We are officially, the guide season has kicked off. So I've pretty much been working every single day out here on the San Juan River, and fishing's been great. So I appreciate your patience. As I kind of go into guide season, I'm gonna try to put out 2 videos a month rather than posting every week, which I really haven't done too great of a job on. You know I'm not lying because I got the sunglasses tan and my sun gloves are already starting to come in, baby. So big things happening. But without further ado, the book that started it all for me is the Curtis Creek Manifesto. So when I was 10 years old, I was at like a TU meeting and I had no idea about anything fly fishing, and a guy gave me this book. I don't know who you are, but after getting into fly fishing and a series of poor life choices, I became a fishing guide. And I'm just kidding, being a fly fishing guide is the best choice. But why is this book so great? It was written by Sheridan Anderson, who was like a climbing buddy with Yvon Chouinard, AKA the guy that runs Patagonia, I think. But anyway, it's a little outdated, it's from the 70s, but the information is so good. And I think this probably, without a doubt, is the best book on fly fishing ever written, which sounds crazy because if you open it up, it's a comic book. But what this book does is it paints in really broad brushstrokes. And when you start to read more advanced stuff, you're gonna come back to this meat and potatoes approach and realize how amazing it is. The book covers awesome things like keeping low angles, sneaking up on trout, and I think this book was a really big inspiration when I go do presentations about a trout first approach. This book really gets your mind thinking about the trout first, their biology, things like that, in a really fun, colorful way. And if you have kids, this is a great book to start them on. But really important stuff, even on page 3, this book is talking about fishing with intent without saying fishing with intent, right? In the 11 commandments of fly fishing, it talks about planning before you fish, and I think that gets missed a lot, even with today's anglers in 2021. So often we're just so excited, we go out there, we're thinking fly first and not fish first, and also river first. And the diagram on this book on page 10 is one of the most important things that I think you can read. I know it's very juvenile and it is kind of broad brushstrokes, but again, going through these pictures, what this is talking about in terms of where fish hold, but also high and low, what's the most important thing is what's not said directly, and what's really to be said is thinking about the river and matching your rig to the river, right? You can see the trout through all different stages, but it's getting you to think, hey, high water, maybe they're low column, maybe fish more. You won't really understand a lot of that until you advance more in your fly fishing career, but I've probably read this book 100 times as a kid, cover to cover. It's a very quick read, and I just can't recommend the Curtis Creek Manifesto enough for any new angler or even intermediate anglers. Yes, some of the information is outdated as it was written in the 70s, but in terms of a technical starting point, I don't think that you can beat this book. Moving on, book number 2 that I think everybody should have is, is Nymphing by George Daniel. This would be, your college graduate course, to the basics that are in the Curtis Creek Manifesto. But Nymphing by George Daniel is just a phenomenal book. It goes over the fine stuff, the minutia. It talks about things like drag. It just expands on everything that you'll be familiar with the Curtis Creek Manifesto. So again, nymphing. Now, why don't I have any things on dry fly fishing? Well, I think, it's covered in the Curtis Creek Manifesto, but I think nymphing and streamer fishing are different than dry fly fishing in the fact that you have to think about the water in a three-dimensional space. And when you're dry fly fishing, you're thinking about a single plane. Now, there can be different currents involved and things to consider. But dry fly fishing, they're only on one part of the column, right? They're eating off the surface. With nymphing, they can be suspended, they can be deep. Same with streamer fishing. It's what you don't see. It's the drag forces below the surface of the water impacting your fly. And these two books are really gonna help you there. Dry fly fishing is a great way, especially if you're new to fly fishing, to even expand on what you've learned in these books are a great place to start. I caught my first fish, we're brook trout in Shenandoah National Park. And it's great, you can see the eats, you can kind of get an idea of where the fish are. Later in life, I went to Montana, and when I was in college, bigger rivers, and my nymphing game was atrocious. And I just couldn't, it was hard for me to thinking about water in 3 dimensions, cross currents, weight, things like that. And I think that's where most anglers struggle. So I think building a foundation on nymphing, is just really gonna help your overall game, because it all applies to dry fly fishing as well. So the other thing I wanna talk about is there's a video that's gonna change your life. You know what that video is? It's an underwater world of trout. Part 1 and 2, they're free on YouTube, and I'll leave the links down below. But what that's really gonna do is help you see underwater and see the effects of different currents, how trout hold, how they behave. And there's also like a 2-minute compilation of them eating sticks and leaves and anything that drives by, or floats by, excuse me. And why is that important? Because it knocks trout off of a pedestal. They're not these Harvard educated masterminds that, oh, your fly has 6 fibers instead of 27 or whatever, and they're not gonna eat it. It's the opposite. If you think about a trout from a biological standpoint first, where they hold, are they suspended, are they deep, you can use that information and game them against their own biology, and you're gonna have better days on the water. As for me, as a fishing guide, I'm tying for all my trips this week, but it's not so important what I'm tying, it's the attributes of those flies that are important. So thinking about that is just really gonna help you. Plus, it's pretty funny to see fish just gnawing on sticks, right? So they're not that smart after all. But those 3 things are really gonna build an awesome foundation for you as a fly angler. And moving forward, you can come back to all 3 of those resources if you need a refresher. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it was a quick one-ish. But I will see you guys on the next video. I'm trying to figure out what to put out for you. It's been really busy, and I just want to thank everybody that I've met through the YouTube channel and all the new faces I've been meeting this year. It's really, really been a joy to be out there on the water with you, and I'll see you guys on the next video.